Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Dane, host of the Rock and Metal Guardian. Hope you're doing great wherever you may find yourselves today. Blessings to all of you wonderful people out there, and welcome to part 2 of my discussion and sharing with you the 50 bands and artists I listen to the most. Again, part 2. Let's go ahead and get started. Again, there's no ranking. Thin Lizzy. Again, what could have been right? John Sykes joins the band, and Thin Lizzy wanting to do things more heavier, and I love this album, inspiring Megadeth, Dave Mustaine. They do a version of Cold Sweat, as you know, forget the album. But yeah, Thunder and Lightning, this is the one. The Sun Goes Down, The Holy War, Cold Sweat, Someday She's Going to Hit Back, great song. Baby Please Don't Go, Bad Habits, and Heart Attack. 1983, so I'm very young. I remember watching MTV, and one of the VJs, Jimmy, I can't remember his last name, curly hair, he said he was probably my favorite, and he was talking about new releases, and he put this up on the screen. He was great, and this is great. Yeah, so what a great discography from start to finish, give or take. Those first 2 albums, a little rough coming out of the gate, but if you listen to those first 2 albums, Thin Lizzy and then Tales from a Blue Orphanage, there's like 2 or 3 songs on each of those albums that foreshadow the greatness that is to come, and you can hear some of that greatness in those tracks. And then once you get to Vagabonds of the Western World, boy, that is a great album if you ask me. And whether you're talking about Eric Bell on guitar or John Sykes here, or Gary Moore on that One and Done, Black Rose, but of course the main the classic lineup is of course Scott Gorham and Brian Robertson, and then you have Snowy White appearing on, I think, the 2 albums that appeared before this one, Renegade, and then I think I don't want to say it's Chinatown, it might be, but yeah, so Snowy White too was a nice treat to listen to. And again, Thin Lizzy has a wonderful discography. You have different phases like so many bands are wont to do, not just because of the change in guitarists. You also have that one album, Bad Attitude, where you just have one of the Gorman. You either have Gorman or Robertson, I forget which. And that is a wonderful album as well. Fighting is amazing, and Fighting is really where they come into their own. Very much foreshadowing Jailbreak in so many ways. Great songs like Emerald, The Boys Are Back of Town, of course, the hit. But the deep cuts when it comes to Thin Lizzy are just phenomenal. It's not just about the hits when it comes to Thin Lizzy. If you ask me, it's about a lot of wonderful deep cuts. And again, what could have been had Phil been around still, and would they have been one of the better heavy metal bands in the 80s? Who knows? But anyway, Thin Lizzy, definitely have to include them. Next, prog band, Yes. And when it comes to Yes, while I do appreciate those first 2 albums, where it's at for me is they begin to hit their stride with the Yes album, and they shoot off to the moon from there. Just some glorious stuff. Maybe a 5 or 6 album run for me. You get, again, the Yes album, not necessarily in this order. You get Fragile, you get Close to the Edge, 3 songs, but it's wonderful. Relayer, 3 songs, which is wonderful. This is my favorite album. Gates of Delirium, my favorite song. And then Heart of the Sunrise on Fragile, my second favorite song. Used to be Heart of the Sunrise, my favorite. The soft-spoken vocals of John Anderson is just one of the best. He's just one of the best. Tales from Topographic Oceans is something that I have to be in the mood for. That's what most people say. Sorry for the cliche, but it's just the way it is. I love the Hindu theme that goes through the album, the 4 different things that they're going for that Steve and John wanted to do, and it's their most experimental album, probably, well, according to most people, fans and critics alike, myself included. Of the 4 tracks, I think it's the first and the last that are my favorite. I haven't revisited that album in a while, but again, you have to be in the mood for it. And someone who studied the 4 or 5 major religions as a class at university, I really came to appreciate Hinduism as a religion, even though I'm a Catholic myself. I like the different, and there's a lot of great stories that have thematically rich, and the spirituality that Howe and Anderson are going for makes total sense. It's a very spiritual album, but at the same time, not the most accessible. But I do like having it in my collection. It's not something I'm going to get rid of. And then, of course, you get into later stuff like with Drama and Don't Kill the Whale and Tempest Fugit. Not necessarily on those albums, I think they are. You have the wonderful Machine Messiah. You have Going for the One, which is an album I thought at first, but I warmed up to. But later, I guess mid-30s. Tormato is hit or miss. There's some good songs there. And I think I'm missing another album. But yeah, Yes is one of those bands near and dear to my heart, despite the fact that there's only really maybe somewhere in between 6 to 8 albums that I really like. Once you get into 90292, I forget the number, I'm thinking of the TV show, but I don't think it's the same number. But once you get into that and Big Generator, I was pretty much out. And then there's a couple things here or there that I like, but Union isn't really a Union album. I'm not going to go down that road. So many people have done that already. But Yes definitely is one of those bands. Yes, I have to say yes to Yes when it comes to putting them in 50 bands and artists I listen to the most. Next is Grand Funk, or Grand Funk Railroad. Proto-metal in many ways, definitely hard rock. And where it's at with Grand Funk Railroad is starting with their debut, one of the greatest debuts of all time, On Time. Love that album cover. And then you get some wonderful releases like We're an American Band with songs like Black Licorice, of course, the title track. Railroad is, I think that's the name of the song, it's just amazing. It's very soft and yet powerful at the same, not soft, but it's just very emotive and powerful. Great album from start to finish. And then you get what we call the Red Album. You get the live album, which is here, just amazing. There's 2 other live albums that I've talked about before. Those are worth having as well. Caught in the Act and 71, 72 Live Tour, I believe it's called. And you have E Pluribus Funk, which is great. You have Survivor, which is not great, but very good. A couple cover tunes on there. And I'm missing a very important one as well. Shine On is pretty decent. It's not amazing, but it's worth having in your collection. Once they start doing the pop stuff like Locomotion and there's another one. I like those 2 cover tunes, but it's too soft for me for Grand Funk Railroad. Paradoxically speaking, I like them, but I don't like them, I guess is what I'm saying. There's still another album that I'm missing. I had the chronology in my head and I lost it. But anyway, yeah, Grand Funk Railroad is one of those bands. I could do a video on this where I would argue that their live material in so many ways is better. I have not seen them live, I was too young, but listening to them live in many ways is more energetic and powerful than their studio stuff. Make of that what you will. So Grand Funk Railroad, have to include them here. And I get that because of my dad, my mom, especially my dad. When I was very young, my mom would win all kinds of stuff off the radio, WTX, WRNO, top 100 45s of the year, top 100 albums of the year, and we all divvied it up. And my mom gave me the 45 of We're an American Band. It was gold. It was beautiful. And then I ended up giving it. Anyway, it changed hands. I'll leave it at that. All right. Next, have to talk about Aerosmith. Opening debut is wonderful, through and including Rock in a Hard Place, although I have issues with A Night in Ruts. There's only like 4 or 5 songs on that, about half of it, I guess. But that is their best album run. I love Live Bootleg. That is wonderful. There's a couple songs later in their career with the more pop-oriented stuff that are okay, but I'm really not a big fan of that stuff. Done with Mirrors is disappointing, although I do appreciate Let the Music Do the Talking, which was a Joe Perry project song originally. His version is better. But when you have a magnum opus album like this, and the previous one, Toys in the Attic, you could listen to those as a double album. I just love Draw the Line. I love the song Kings and Queens. I love the title track. I love Milk Cow Blues. One of the great things about Aerosmith is that, like Judas Priest, they're one of these bands, at least when Aerosmith was in the 70s, that they did wonderful cover songs. They didn't disappoint like some bands do, and even Cry Me a River is amazing on Rockin' a Hard Place. That album is heavy as all you know what. Some days it's my favorite, but on most days, this is where it's at. Toys in the Attic, I'm not a big fan of Walk This Way anymore, overplayed, but it is still a phenomenal record. As is Oh Get Your Wings is phenomenal as well. So yeah, what a great early run they had, Aerosmith. Americans, as critics have said, America's version of the Rolling Stones. Next, a little prog, Genesis, great live album. I don't have, nor will I ever own, From Genesis to Revelation, and not to be ugly, it's just not my cup of tea. It's really when Trespass comes out that they start to, come into their own. It's really not to Nursery Crime, really, when you get the classic lineup. But those two albums are great, I think. Of course, Foxtrot is wonderful, and their best run is from Trespass through and including, I would say, Trick of the Tail. And you have some wonderful filling the shoes of Peter Gabriel when Phil Collins takes the reins for vocals. And then there were three is pretty good. Pretty much not a big fan of Duke, too bombastic. I do like Abacab. And then after that, I'm pretty much out. There are some songs here and there on the Genesis album, self-titled, that I do like. And then on We Can't Dance, or the one before after that, Invisible Touch. It's one of those two. You have Putting Down the Last Spike about the railroad. Right, that's a wonderful song. I think it's an epic track, maybe 7 or 8 minutes. But yeah, early Genesis is where it's at. I'm the opposite of Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, because you like Phil Collins, right? Imagine if he was a Peter Gabriel fan, and if he was the opposite, and he said something along the lines of, I really don't like the later Genesis, too commercial, something like that. So anyway, yeah, I love Genesis, just a great prog band all around. Steve Hackett is one of my favorite guitarists of all time. Tony Banks is a great musician in his own right. The whole band is Mike Rutherford, Peter Gabriel, Phil Collins, you name it. Chester Thompson on drums later on. So yeah, you have some great epic tracks like The Fountain of Salampsus, of course, Supper's Ready, The Musical Box, Cinema Show is wonderful. Just one of those bands that if you like epic music, epic tracks, think Rush, Pink Floyd, they're the band for you. Of course, you have to like prog rock. So yeah, what a great band. Have to include them here, listen to them all the time. Whether people make fun of me or not, people I know don't care. All right, next, some more prog, psychedelic music. Talk about Pink Floyd. Animals is their magnum opus to me, along with The Wall. Those are their two biggest works. This is my favorite, although it's neck and neck with these two albums. And talk about a band that has different phases. You have the very early stage when they call themselves the T-Set, I believe, with Syd Barrett in the band and someone else even before him, I believe, or someone after during the same time. It's in the early years box set. I get all that mixed up. I don't own that, but something to investigate. And then you, of course, have Syd Barrett on the first album and a half, give or take. Then David Gilmour comes in, and it's still very much psychedelic, although he has the hint of what's to come with Interstellar Overdrive on the first album. Very eclectic noise rock type stuff. It's wonderful. It's even on the Interstellar Overdrive. I think it's a little bit of a different version. I have the EP from the soundtrack of Let's All Make Love in London movie, and it's on that. This is a 2 or 3 song EP of Pink Floyd from some songs they did for that. And maybe I'll show you that sometime. Sometime it's worth having. I think it's out of print. I'll double check. But yeah, and then you get into the soundtrack era of the band, and things like More and La Valley or Obscured by Clouds, what I just love. You get the experimental stuff with Uma Guma, where they're trying to showcase their individual talents, kind of like what Yes does on Fragile, sort of. It's also got a live disc, right? And then you get into where they begin to shine with metal because of Echoes and some other stuff. And then, of course, Dark Side of the Moon, where they really hit their stride with Wish You Were Here after that, and Animals and The Wall in the final cut. I think I missed an album, but yeah, and I don't care for anything after the final cut. Yeah, so, and there was something else I wanted to say. So, well, you have this, Adam Hart Mother is, there are things on it I like and things on it I don't, so that's what I meant to say, and make of that what you will. I'm not giving it away, but it's not like my favorite Pink Floyd either. Waters and Gilmour, where they get along is that they both dismissed that album as a mistake or a fluke or a bad fluke or something like that. But yeah, Pink Floyd is one of these bands I love. The Zabriskie Point music, there's extra tracks you can find elsewhere online that they put on the early years. That's some wonderful stuff. And that was the soundtrack I failed to mention. I love the stuff from that. And The Man, The Journey, that's a wonderful treat, that epic live set that they did that you can still get. Anyway, so Pink Floyd. Next is Queen. I especially love the early stuff. If you've been watching this channel, you know I'm one of these people that, not always, but it seems to be a running theme or motif with me, musically, taste-wise, that it seems, not always, but it seems that the first half of a band or artist discography is where it's at. And there are exceptions where David Bowie's back end is almost or just as good as the early stuff, and there's Neil Young, not quite, but there's some stuff later on in his career like Toast and some other things that can rival some of the early stuff. Not as much as Bowie, but and there are other bands and artists like that. So back to Queen. I often listen to A Night at the Opera and A Day at the Races as a double album because it so works. And those first two albums, very progressive, not necessarily prog rock, but very progressive, heavy at times. I don't agree with Martin Popoff when he says that Queen is Led Zeppelin on steroids, unless you're talking about the early stuff. But there's nothing steroid musically when you have songs like Don't Stop Me Now and the vaudeville camp and cabaret stuff. That's not heavy at all. So how's that, Zeppelin on steroids? I don't get that. The stuff on jazz, that kind of stuff. But no, Queen is great from their first album through and including News of the World. And some other good stuff or great stuff on The Game. Dragon Attack comes to mind, and the title track. And then later on in their career, there's some really good stuff, kind of a return to form with songs like Hammer to Fall and I Want It All. What a great, when I heard that, I went nuts. Things like Innuendo and The Miracle was a nice return to form. So, Queen. All right, next is Jimi Hendrix, a short discography, but a lot of live material posthumously released. You have When He Was Alive, I believe, Band of Gypsies, Live at Monterey, the Woodstock 2 CD set is the one you get, not the single abridged version. You got to get both discs. That is amazing. But if we talk about just the 3 studio albums, there's nothing bad on all 3 of those. And this is the 2-disc vinyl. This is the CD version of what was originally a 2 vinyl set, a double vinyl record. Electric Ladyland, my favorite of the trilogy. That is Jimi Hendrix. Just wonderful blues, an inspiration to all people who like classic rock, hard rock, proto metal, runs the gamut, right? So yeah, Jimi Hendrix inspiring people like KK Downing, etc. All right, and people who don't even play music who like music though, inspire them as well. Next is Humble Pie, one of the greatest live albums of all time. Short record, but you have some epic tracks on here. Who does an album where most of the songs are all cover songs? Not too many, but it works. That's a very bold gamble, and it paid off dividends for this band. It's sad that Frampton and Marriott never got to work together again because Marriott ended up dying in the fire from a cigarette that he left alighted as he fell asleep. Very tragic, but so the story goes that Frampton wanted to reunite with Marriott because, let's face it, everything after it's the one with the keyhole on the album that got a little funky. Everything after that's not very good. So, and even that album is a bit suspect. But this is a wonderful band, inspiring bands like the Black Crowes, etc. one of classic rock's best albums, one of classic rock's best bands. You got a lot of great blues rock going on. The twin guitar of Marriott and Frampton is just dynamite, especially live. But the studio stuff, then you get Clem Clemson in on albums like Smokin', which is a great underrated gem if you ask me. Those first 4 albums, like As Safe as Yesterday is, Town and Country, and then the third album just called Humble Pie. That's a great trilogy, and then the 4th album is wonderful as well. I just love Humble Pie. I got into Humble Pie kind of because of my dad. My dad was more of a Frampton solo guy. First 4 albums, the solo record, the live album, and then I'm in You, and that's where he and I both stopped listening to Frampton because that's his best part of his discography. I tried to like just the later stuff, but even his guitar playing on David Bowie's album Will Never Let Me Down was a disappointment. I appreciate the effort, and I like that he toured with his buddy because they were both buddies, right? But yeah, Humble Pie is just a treasure for me. I love Humble Pie. Can't get enough. Again, one of those what could have been. Right, next is Journey. Call them yacht rock if you want to, and in many ways they are, but I have to admit, and I'm not afraid to admit, that those first 3 albums, Journey, Next, and Look Into the Future, I Eat Up With a Spoon, there's some wonderful shredding from Neal Schon and those jazz. Well, the second and third album are more jazz fusion. There's a little bit of that on the first album. Those two instrumentals. I think Topaz is one of them. But on the third album, I think you get that song Spaceman, which is kind of foreshadowing what's to come with Raleigh on the Steve Perry albums, right? Or Rowley. But those first 3 albums, I just love. As I said, I'm a big jazz fusion person, and I know a lot of people poo-poo on those, but I think that first Journey album, from its jazz fusion instrumentals, but mostly the stuff with lyrics on it, I think that's a dynamite debut album. One of the best debut albums of all time in rock history. This is perhaps and the follow-up. Frontiers is where the band peaked, unfortunately, but you have the comeback, at least for me, album with Trial by Fire, which is more of a Steve Perry album than anything, but hey, I don't mind that. And yet, which have at the same time is, as Neal Schon is wont to do, you have him having these moments at the end of the song where he's just shredding his butt off, even though it's a ballad. It works. Who can do that, right? It works. So everything from the first album through and including Frontiers and then Trial by Fire is where it's at for me. Some of the later stuff is okay, but you have albums like Departure and Infinity, kind of seems to tell a story with their spaceship Beetle, right? Captured before this. This is them escaping the egg or the planet, right? Great artwork, one of the most colorful albums of all time, but the music is where it's at. There's no voice like Steve Perry. To each his own, but I still don't get. Everyone. I'm sorry. Everyone hears things differently, but I'm beside myself when I hear Martin Popoff say that Steve Perry's voice, he's like a clown. I don't get that whatsoever. He's a clown. Anyway, again, to each his own. But yeah, Journey. I love Journey. All right, next is Blue Oyster Cult. There's some snoozers in the discography, but those first 3 albums, what's called the Black and White period, are some of their best work. You have songs like Then Came the Last Days of May, one of my favorite songs. You have and I'm drawing a blank. There's a lot of really cool stuff there. Then you have the live album that comes after those 3 albums, On Your Feet or On Your Knees, which showcases how great those songs are live. 7 Dizbusters or something like that is one of the songs I'm thinking of. She's As Beautiful as a Foot. There's just crazy song titles. And then you get the 4th album where they really broke big in the United States and elsewhere with the song, of course, Don't Fear the Reaper, which is my favorite song, and made its way onto the Halloween movie, the original, and it's not on the soundtrack, though. That's all John Carpenter stuff. But John Carpenter. Yeah. So it's an interesting album compared to the first three. It's very different. You have them doing different textures than you normally thought from the different direction for the band. But I love it. Songs like Tattoo Vampire, Debbie Denise, This Ain't the Summer of Love, I think starts it off. It's fabulous. What a great album. And it's the first album where you have artwork in color, so letting you know perhaps they're moving in a different direction. Then you get Spectres, which is, I think, an underrated classic. Got Godzilla on that, right? To name a few. To name one, excuse me, I'm not a big fan of Cultosaurus erectus, but I do like the song Black Blade because it's about Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champion character in his writings, in his novels. And of course, Blue Oyster Cult collaborated with Michael Moorcock on the song Veteran of the Psychic Wars, which is about the Eternal Champion and going through post-traumatic stress syndrome. And that's a great album, Fire of Unknown Origin. That and the third album are battling out for which of the two is my favorite. I'm not a big fan of their later stuff. There's a couple good songs on Mirrors, one or two, as I said, on Cultosaurus erectus. Once you get to Club Ninja, there's a couple good songs on there, but Revolution by Night is pretty much where I'm out. But from the first album through and including this, it's just where it's at. So Blue Oyster Cult, always listening to them. Next is the Black Crowes. You get a band who comes out right off out of the gate with their debut and shows you, hey, we're very much inspired by the Rolling Stones, the Faces, and Humble Pie, and a tad bit of Led Zeppelin. And this is my favorite album by them, but paradoxically, I don't think they peaked early. The second album, you get Remedy and Sting Me with some gospel and soul, and it works, tied to the Humble Pie Faces Rolling Stone shtick that they do, but they make it their own. There's some great songwriting and some great lyrics, and then they really switch gears with Amorica, and yet it works. Then you get two albums back to back that could be a double album if you listen to them. I often do with Three Snakes, One Charm, and now I forget, it's got Share the Ride on it. But anyway, it's got the Fireflies, and they're all dressed in white. By Your Side, those two are wonderful. And then you get the Lost Crows, which is out of print, but you can probably download it, I would imagine. You get War Paint, which is, I think, underrated. You get the wonderful, for the most part, Before the Frost Until the Freeze, Crowology, a nice anthology with all acoustic stuff, and one Flying Burrito Brothers cover song. You get some really good live stuff from the band. They have 3 or 4 live albums. You get them putting an album out with Jimmy Page. So yeah, Black Crowes is, if you thought that rock was dying in the 90s, this kind of showed you, nope, it's not. So Black Crowes. All right, turn these upside down. Now this next one you're going to be familiar with, and probably the rest of this pile you see me talk about a little bit on this channel. Let's do this one next, actually. So Triumph. I listen to Triumph all the time. From the debut album, Rock and Roll Machine, or In the Beginning, whichever one you want to consider the first album. Those are where they get started. There are some wonderful deep cuts. They're pretty much all deep cuts, because except for Rock and Roll Machine and the cover song Rocky Mountain Way, everything else is pretty much, not popular, played on the radio stuff, unless it's popular to you because you played it like I did. There's some, and why Triumph for me is such a great band, and for us Triumph fans, is because Rick Emmett. Rick Emmett is what makes up so much of the band. His delivery, his amazing singing voice, his guitar chops are amazing. He can shred, he can play amazing acoustic guitar, he does it all. Great band. And this is their magnum opus. And that's not to disrespect the other 2 members of the band, but Rick Emmett is what makes the band for me. I think Live at the US Festival is a disc you should get if you can still get it. It showcases them demonstrating that they are a powerhouse. If you remember that on MTV, right? US Festival. They blew so many of the other bands out the water, if you ask me. Again, because of that guitar tone and that guitar crunch and stellar solos and riffs from Rick Emmett. So after the first two albums, you get other albums like Progressions of Power, which grew on me. Just a Game is amazing. This and the follow-up, Never Surrender, are their two best albums. Sunder 7 is pretty good. I don't like Sport of Kings very much. Surveillance is okay, but they've got enough albums in their discography that I find myself returning to them again and again and again and again, and I just love them. Wonderful album, wonderful band. All right, next is Kiss. This is where I really began as a 9-year-old to move away from pop music, still listening to the Beatles, but move into heavier waters and really stay the course of wanting to listen to and find and share my love of hard rock and then eventually heavy metal. This is their best album, and while I don't listen to those first 3 studio albums very much, paradoxically seems to be a theme or motif, I do listen to them still, because this has the hits of those 3 albums. But unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, there's some songs not on here that you must listen to if you like them on those first 3 songs, like studio version of Going Blind, Mainline, Getaway on the 3rd album, Dressed to Kill. So yeah, I do listen to those. There's a couple of snoozers like Kissin' Time and Love Theme from Kiss on the 1st album. One of those they were forced to, by management, to put on the album. Excuse me, but aside from that, so everything from the 1st album through and including, let's see, after Love Gun, you have the solo records, and we know that most people will tell you it's a consensus. It seems that Ace has rather the best solo album, and I'm sure that cheesed Gene and Paul off to no end. Peter's is the most disappointing, then Gene's would be the second most disappointing, and then Paul's is actually pretty good, but it pales in comparison to Ace. So good for you, Ace, as I say all the time. And then you get Dynasty. So from the 1st album through and including Dynasty, I just love Dynasty's the disco record. I love those 3 R&B type disco songs in I Was Made for Loving You, Sure Know Something, and Magic Touch. Paul's voice is just amazing. He never sounded better. I love the Ace and Peter songs on the album. I don't care much for Charisma, but other than that, that is a very good album if you ask me. Then you get the music from The Elder Unmasked. Not a big fan of those 2, although there's a couple songs on each, or 3 or 4 songs actually on Unmasked that I still like, and it's not Shandy or Shandy. And then you get the comeback album with Creatures of the Night, which I just love, even though Ace isn't on it. Lick It Up is pretty damn good as well, but after that I'm pretty much out, although I do like in that run I like Kiss Alive 2. Not a big fan of Kiss Alive 3 and Kiss Alive 4, the symphonic one, but of their later studio albums, I do like a song here, a song there. I like a song on Asylum. I like a song on Animalize. I like 2 songs on Asylum, actually. I like a couple songs on Revenge, although I don't think that's the great comeback people say it is. I love the live album with Peter and Ace coming back for the band for Unplugged, which is phenomenal if you ask me, especially the acoustic version of Rock Bottom. This is where it gets rough, says Paul, and it gets heavy again at that point of the song. There's a song or 2 on Monster and Sonic Boom that I like, but I don't own those. But yeah, Kiss is one of those bands that are always going to be with me. So, Kiss. All right, next is Mott the Hoople / Mott, focusing mostly on Mott the Hoople. Ian Hunter, as I said in my previous video, is a treasure, great lyricist. The glam period of All the Young Dudes, Mott, and the Hoople, those 3 albums, perhaps their best run. But you also have dynamite stuff on Brain Capers and Mad Shadows, which is their sophomore album. The debut is a little unpolished and raw, but there's some really cool stuff there. Rock and Roll Queen is great, the hit off the album. Their country-esque type album, Wildlife, I'm very fond of. They do a version of Crosby, Stills, Nash's song Ohio on that. It's got some different flavors and textures that country rock, folk, country rock kind of stuff, but it works. Ian Hunter's range is very cool, from the opening album through and including The Hoople, which is the last album with him. The glam stuff is some of my favorite, but I also like some of the deep cuts on the non-glam stuff, just the rock, the down and gritty rock and roll, I guess you would call it, as a subgenre, if that's one. Meat and Potatoes rock, I guess you could call it. Brain Capers as an example of that. Mad Shadows. If we talk about Mott for a minute, once Ian leaves the band, the first album, Driving On, has really, of the 9 or 10 songs, you have 4 or 5 dynamite songs, and then Shouting and Pointing, same thing. And the kicker on Shouting and Pointing is the song There's No Such Thing as Rock and Roll. That song seems to have been meant for Ian Hunter, because I listened to that and I'm going, that sounds like an Ian Hunter song. And he sounds nothing like, the singer sounds nothing like Ian Hunter, and yet the phrasing and the inflection of syllables and words, and from a lyrical standpoint, it seems like it was meant for Hunter, and it's a great song. So yeah, Mott the Hoople. Next is, going back to Prague, is King Crimson. What a great run of live albums this band has, perhaps more than any other band. Don't quote me on that. This is where I came in. On 8-track I heard this for the first time. I've owned this on cassette, 8-track, various CD versions. I owned it on vinyl once or twice. Very eclectic band. I forget who said that the trilogy of this, Starless and Bible Black and Red, is like a prog version of Black Sabbath. Maybe you have the Light and Shade song Starless on Red, which is one of those Light and Shade albums that starts with very slow, but boy does it get heavy as all. You know what? With elements of jazz fusion, funk, the bass from Wetton in that area, it's very funky and heavy at the same time. It's great, and then it gets soft again at the end. It comes full circle. It's amazing. The song Red itself is great. That's my favorite part of the band. There's a live version where they do this in its entirety. I forget the name. Live at Newcastle, maybe. It's back there in the bedroom with the rest of my King Crimson stuff. It's wonderful. I got it about a year ago. I don't think I've talked about that really much on this channel. You have great live stuff, for example, like the box set, The Great Deceiver. You have other great live stuff like the Elements boxes, Projects, which is out of print. I did a video on that. You have some wonderful stuff with respect to the 3 drummer lineup, right? Great stuff as well. The first album, one of the greatest debut prog rock albums of all time, perhaps inspired by the Moody Blues in their Days of Future Past album. Sounds like that to me, but it of course is different, but it has similar atmospheres. The second album, The Sophomore Effort, is in many ways a twin album to the first, but the first one's a little bit better. Then you get into weirdness with the album Lizard. I do like it. Islands, I think, is underrated. I do like it quite a bit. I listen to that all the time. Got some jazz fusion, jazz fusion in parts. There's a song, Ladies of the Road, that has a Beatlesque flavor to it at times. I think in one song, Fripp is playing a dobro guitar, which sounds amazing. So different little phases from King Crimson. And of course, speaking of phases, you get the beat phase with Beat, Discipline, and 3 of a Perfect Pair. Then you get some comeback stuff. I do like those 3 albums, but they don't hold up to the Wetton era for me. I like Adrian Blue very much, so no disrespect. When you get Power to Believe and the album before that, Heavy Construction, or Construction of Light, those were comeback albums for me, kind of a return to form. So yeah, King Crimson. Next is Whitesnake. I see Whitesnake often until you get to this as an extension of Deep Purple and his solo album. His first 2 solo albums, David Coverdale, is very much an extension of Deep Purple, because you have so much. He keeps that blues, hard rock blues going, very soulful at times because he has that soulful, very powerful and emotive voice. Coverdale does, and it's when you get to the American version of Slide It In this that he changes and wants the commercial success and chasing the hair metal dream, if you will, and of course Slip of the Tongue as well. And I do like this period. This is one of my favorite albums of all time in the discography and in rock in general, but I like Slide It In more, and I'm talking about the US version, but the British or UK version of Slide It In is a nice bridge to introduce us to the American Slide It In and this. So changing of the phases, if you will, or changing of the guard from the heavy, soulful, blues-based hard rock to the more hair metal-y stuff. But I love it. I know some people were disappointed and disowned Whitesnake and Coverdale once he went all hair metal, but I do like it, and his later stuff is okay. I don't care for it that much, but everything from the first debut album, Trouble, through and including Slip of the Tongue, and then the revised version of Russell's Heart is where it's at. So Whitesnake, one of the greatest rock and roll singers of all time, right? And Deep Purple steps up to the mic live, made in Europe, and says, rock and roll. All right, next is the band Sweet. In their early days, they were known as The Sweet. They dropped the article, thank goodness, and the American version of Desolation Boulevard. Short discography if you don't count the post-Brian Connolly years. For me, the Brian Connolly years is where it's at. No one sounds like Brian Connolly. One of the reasons why I love this band and therefore his voice, or the other way around. Their heavy area, for lack of a better description, would be Desolation Boulevard, the American version, because of songs like Sweet F.A. is so heavy. You have that galloping, dun, 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 and then that amazing, seems to be a long-lasting guitar solo at the end, which is phenomenal. Set Me Free and Into the Night are the heaviest songs on this. No You Don't's pretty heavy. So you have a combination of the Nicky Chin and Mike Chapman stuff, and then the heavier stuff, and then it gets even heavier, so to speak, sort of, with Give Us a Wink. Some amazing blistering guitar work on that album from Andy Scott, as is here. This is really a greatest hits album. So if you go back to Sweet F.A. is where Sweet F.A. appears, and that's very heavy. Then you have go back to the earlier bubblegum stuff with the first album. I still like that stuff, right? Kind of reminds you of the Archies a little bit, maybe Paul McCartney here and there, some of his solo stuff. Just a little bit of Cheap Trick inspired, right? The song Cover Girl, that B-side that Sweet does, perhaps foreshadowing Cheap Trick's sound in many ways, maybe not. But the Sweet are one of my top 10 favorite bands of all time. They have some pretty cool live stuff, not a whole lot, but Live in Denmark is good. The stuff in the box set, which I've shown before, is phenomenal. You have the album Strung Up, which is compilation of live material and greatest hits, is worth owning. I think that's back in print. I've had that for a while now. So yeah, Sweet is all over the place genre-wise, but you get some good stuff either way. So for example, when Off the Record comes out after Give Us a Wink, they stop being, well, you still have a little bit of heavy stuff with respect to Live for Today, which has kind of a punk theme to it. There's some heavy stuff there, so I misspoke, but there's some more quasi-hard rock stuff, but it doesn't carry the same heaviness in many ways. Kind of does, kind of doesn't, as Give Us a Wink does, and some of the heavy stuff from Sweet F.A. or Desolation Boulevard, whether the British or UK and American versions of that album. And then you also have, and I'm trying to think, am I missing this is a great album. It's got Love Is Like Oxygen on it, and it's got the guitar strings and the blue sky behind it, and I'm drawing a blank here. But that album has Lady of the Lake. This is the album after Off the Record, I believe. I get Off the Record and this one mixed up. And let me get the box set to show you what I'm talking about. Alright, sorry about that, guys and ladies. Yeah, so Level Headed is the album I'm thinking about. This is 1978, and then I think this is the follow-up off the record. This is, no, 1977, so I was right. This came before this one. So, yeah, this is after Give Us a Wink, and you have some really cool stuff. You have the song Funk It Up, She Give Me Lovin', Hard Times, Laura Lee, which is great, Windy City, Fever of Love to start things off, Lost Angels, Midnight to Daylight is phenomenal. Live for Today is the hit, if you will, on here. And then this, yeah, Level Headed, and the original album cover was this. And I love this album cover. This is, a close view of a guitar with a tape deck in it. But yeah, you have the hit off this album, Love Is Like Oxygen, and what makes this song great is the instrumental part where you have acoustic guitar and bass, and it's very soft, and you have like strings, like a harp, or it's meant to sound like a harp, and it keeps going up an octave to get heavier, and then it goes from acoustic, as you know, to electric guitar. It's the dun 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 dun, dun. And then that's one of the greatest moments in all rock history for me. But you get some wonderful hits, pop rock stuff like California Nights and the lovely Silverbird, Lettres d'Amour. You get the quirky Air in a Tape Loop, which I do like. You get the song Fountain and Strong Love. Dream On, the opening track, is Dynamite. So yeah, I really like this album. I know a lot of people were disappointed. And then after that, you get Cut Above the Rest after Connolly left the band because of his throat issues from the bar fight. And that's where I was pretty much out. There was times when I owned that on vinyl as a teenager, but I really don't care to listen to that anymore. The Brian Connolly years, as the box set his name, is where it's at for me. So yeah, I have to include Sweet, one of my favorite bands of all time. Next is UFO. Now, while the first two albums are not dynamite, there's some really cool stuff there, like Prince Kajuku and the Coming of Prince Kajuku, and is it Let's Get Ready or something like that. It's, they hadn't found their sound yet. Their signature sound comes on their third album, so this is their de facto debut, so to speak. But you have that live album after the first two albums, the UFO and then Flying, and then that live album is kind of interesting to hear them play live. Mick Bolton is not a terrible guitar player, but he's not horrible either. But this, as I said, is where I came in a different video, and this is the greatest hits for me. I love everything here. Oh My, Crystal Light, Dr. Doctor, Space Child, Rock Bottom, my favorite song on the album and in their career. Too Young to Know is great. Time on My Hands is a slow ballad, but so emotive and powerful. Built for Comfort, the Willie Dixon cover tune. Lipstick Trace is an introduction to the final and wonderful song, Queen of the Deep, and that ending of Queen of the Deep is just amazing, which I've talked about before. Then you get a wonderful album that follows this, the de facto sophomore album, Force It, greatest hits album again for me. Other albums include, not necessarily in this order, Obsession and Lights Out were just amazing. Dare I say, phenomenon. Let's see what else. You have Not Out of the Night, that's the song on the album. No Place to Run with Mike Tonka Chapman. The Chapman years I am quite fond of. You have albums like The Wild, The Willing, and The Innocent. Making Contact and Mechanics. I love those albums. I even like a lot of Misdemeanor, and that's pretty much where I stopped listening to them. Ain't Misbehavin' was a terrible EP. And then there's some comeback stuff with Michael, but sparse with respect to songs that I like. You got things like The Monkey Puzzle and Covenant. There's some good stuff, but pales in comparison to the first half of the discography. One of my favorite bands of all time. Phil Mogg's voice is amazing. What can you say about Michael Schenker that hasn't been said already? Pete Way's bass playing, so inspiring. And Andy Parker's drums are nothing to sneeze at either. So UFO. All right, we're almost done. Next is a band I truly love and have talked about, that I talk about all the time on this channel. Talking about Uriah Heep. For me, this is their magnum opus. Roger Dean artwork in many ways at its best. From the opening debut through and including Abominog, with the exception of Conquest, I just love. This is a great run, folks, minus Conquest, which has 2 or 3 songs that I actually do like. I wish John Sloman had a better career, but it is what it is. Hey, Bowie. My cat's been a little bit not squeamish, skittish because of the thunderstorm. He's just coming out to say hi. Sorry for the interruption. Hi, baby. Okay. So Uriah Heep, that debut album is one of the greatest debut albums I think of all time. You have the cover song Come Away Melinda, which is so sad and yet so cathartic and emotive. Gypsy, of course, very proggy. You got some heavy stuff in that song. Just a wonderful album. I think it's underrated as an album in general and as a debut. Sophomore, No Slump, with more progressive rock with the last song, the title track, right? Now, the title track is eluding me. Salisbury. So yeah, you got some wonderful stuff there. Lord Byron. David Byron's voice is one of the true gems in the rock and roll world. Very unique sounding. And you have songs like The Park and Bird of Prey with the harmony, melody. Oh, this is fabulous. Then they shift phases with the third album. Look at Yourself. You get more progressive with, or you continue with the progressive rock with July Morning, a nice 10-minute or 11-minute epic track. It's amazing live as well. And you get songs that have that slide guitar in it. What an overall great album. And then the fourth album is this. As I said, their magnum opus. You got some folk rock with The Wizard. You got some heavy stuff with respect to All My Life is the heaviest song. The way he keeps raising his voice in that is great. Traveling in Time is a nice hard rockin' tune. The commercial Easy Living is wonderful. Then you get really wonderful, even more wonderful poetic lyrics with Poet's Justice and Circle of Hands, which are just dynamite. More emotive and powerful songs than heavy, but wonderful. Rainbow Demon is a classic. Paradise to Spell has that Meatloaf type of piano. It was wonderful. David Byron's voice is all over the place in a good way, in different moods and phases and tones. Is great. What a great. And then the follow-up to this, kind of companion album to this, The Magician's Birthday. You have the epic title track, Battle Between Good and Evil is wonderful. Blind Eye is great. Sweet Lorraine is great. What's the opening track? Sunrise, what a powerful tune. Kind of reminds me of Grand Funk Railroad for some reason. Then you get Sweet Freedom in the discography, and the title track there is great. That I think is, an underrated album. I love it from start to finish with songs like Seven Star, Pilgrim, and of course the classic radio hit Stealin', which is one of my favorite songs of all time. Think of, when I said David Coverdale coming up to the mic and saying rock and roll, you have Byron saying the same thing somewhere in the song towards the end where it goes, rock and roll, the love of rock and roll that we have, right? And then of course you have Wonder World, which is kind of companion piece to Sweet Freedom. I love this album. So then you get into some of the albums where the Byron era is coming to an end because things aren't as good as they were. Albums like High and Mighty and Return to Fantasy, but there's some good stuff and some great stuff on there, but not everything on those two are great. Someone once said to listen to High and Mighty as if it was a Ken Hensley solo record. I kind of see it as a Kensley Box solo record, if you ask me. Weep in Silence on High and Mighty is one of their best songs of all time. And then you get into the trilogy with John Lawton, which I think are dynamite. Firefly is my favorite, the first one in the trilogy. Innocent Victim is really cool as well, and Fallen Angel I love as well, but Firefly is my favorite of those three. John Lawton's voice is different, but yet so emotive and powerful as well. You got some great rockin' songs there. And of course, let me talk about Abominog, the Peter Golby beginning with Peter Golby on vocals coming over from Trapeze. And you have some heavy stuff on there like the closing, Sell Your Soul, but you have other heavier songs like No Place to Run, Too Scared to Run, But then you have some soft ballads like Prisoner and some other things. And then you have some mid-tempo rockers. A lot of covers on this album, but Uriah Heep makes them their own. And this is a wonderful album. You get the bonus version with some the Tin Soldier song, the cover song, and some other things. Great band. So Uriah Heep. Next is Black Sabbath. Have to include Black Sabbath. One of my favorite heavy metal bands of all time, and my favorite heavy metal band of all time. And what a discography that they have, because you have, like so many bands, members come and go, but that first album with Ozzy, right, Black Sabbath, through and including Sabotage, is just amazing. Ozzy's voice, again, I've said this before, is not the best, but there's just something charming and charismatic about it, and it works with the music, and that's so important. When he's angry, I've said this before, is when he's at its best. You have wonderful songs on here, like Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, that showcase that angst that he has, and angst is necessary in so many ways for metal or heavy metal. That debut is one of my favorite debuts of all time. Definitely no sophomore slump with Paranoid. Greatest hits album, if you ask me, or it became a greatest hits album. I love when that happens in many cases. The third album, Master Reality, is where they invent doom, so to speak. The fourth album is a continuation of that because they dropped their tuning. The third and fourth album. Then you get this masterpiece. Then you get Sabotage, great songs on the album, like The Writ, very angry and full of angst, the last song on the album. And you get the two heavy songs, the three heaviest songs rather, are The Writ, Symptom of the Universe, and Hole in the Sky. Megalomania is amazing. Then we move on to Never Say Die and Technical Ecstasy. Not Sabbath at their best, but you have some really cool songs on those two albums, like Junior's Eyes, Johnny Blade, the two jazz songs at the end of Never Say Die, the instrumental, and then the concluding song, which the names are eluding me. You have Dirty Women, you have It's All Right, those are great songs. You have Rock and Roll Kids, All Moving Parts Stand Still. So these two albums are not great, but they're worth having in your Sabbath collection. Then you get the Ronnie James Dio trilogy. Though they're not back to back, you get, including Live Evil, which would make it a tetralogy, but that's a live album. But if you include that, it's worth owning, is what I mean. So that the trilogy of studio albums, as you know, is Heaven and Hell, for the greatest songs that Sabbath ever did are on those. Then the Mob Rules, 5 of those songs on that album are 5 of the best songs Sabbath ever did. And then you get Dehumanizer, 3 of the best songs Sabbath ever did, Computer God, I, and Too Late. Great songs from Dio. And then you get the, not necessarily in this order, you get the Tony Martin years, 5 albums from him. 3 of them I think are just dynamite: Tear, Headless Cross, and Cross Purposes. You have 1 album with Glenn Hughes, which I don't care for, Eternal Idol, even though it's got Tony Martin on it, I don't care for it, and same thing with Forbidden. And then you have 13, the last album with Ozzy. And I've said so much about this already in the last couple weeks. I'll just say that there's 3 or 4 songs that I like on there, but it's not an album I return to. But overall, in the Black Sabbath catalog, there's just so much to enjoy, and that makes them one of the greatest bands of all time. The first heavy metal band, I agree with Martin Popoff's assessment there, starting with that debut, Black Sabbath, and then they went on from there. Inconsistent in their discography because so many different singers and quite a few drummers here and there, and even towards the end, a couple of bass players here and there. But just a band I have to return to time and time again. And I'm missing a prop, so let me get it. I Actually, I take that back. I mentioned this band already. Sorry about that. I thought I didn't, but anyway. So let me finish the final three. Deep Purple I have to include here. Fell in love with this band right off the gate when I heard, and the address is Hush, and Mandrake Root, and there's another album. I'm sorry, there's another song that's very similar to Mandrake Root. Mandrake Root, and it's not Into the Fire. Trying to see, it's Ian Gillan often played it with Richie Blackmore when they were both in the band. Anyway, Mandrake Root is just amazing, and it's heavy, and I'm trying to think of the other song, but it's eluding me. So there are two songs that Ian did after Rod Evans left that continued to be as live, as part of the live set for a long time, at least through the 70s. So maybe the name of the song will come to me when I'm trying to sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning. So in rock, competing with Led Zeppelin II, this is the greatest hits album if you ask me. Speed King, Bloodsucker, Child in Time, Flight of the Rat, Into the Fire, Living Wreck, Hard Lovin' Man, and you get Black Knight also as a bonus track, and some other bonus tracks on this bonus disc. But those first three albums with Rod Evans are not great, but there's some wonderful stuff there anyways. But this is where they really come into their own with the trilogy of this, Fireball, and Machine Head. What a great trilogy. Machine Head is arguably by many their magnum opus, but I think I like this one more. Fireball is wonderful as well. The drumming from Ian Pace is always stellar, even in the last half of the discography, even though that's not a part of Deep Purple I visit much. But when you get into Mark III, even with David Coverdale, a different sound, but it's amazing because David Coverdale's voice is just so perfect for rock and roll. That's soulful, bluesy, heavy at times, powerful and emotive, whether he's singing about, missing out on love or having love or getting lucky or being a loner or a drifter or topics of other, things, topics about other things, he's wonderful. There's no one like him. So different from Gillan, but they're so amazing for different reasons. The trilogy that he has, of course, Burn, Stormbringer, and Come Taste the Band. Come Taste the Band, No More Blackmore. You get Tommy Bolin, but it's wonderful. Songs like Drifter, as I mentioned, and now I'm trying to think of songs, but that's a great album. I think that Come Taste the Band is an underrated masterpiece. And then after Come Taste the Band is where things get tricky, but from the debut through and including Come Taste the Band for me is the best Deep Purple phases, if you will, the best part of the discography, if you will. I'm not a big Steve Morse fan. I'm not a big fan of the new guy, Simon something. He's a great guitar player, as is Steve Morse, but I just don't think I know for me personally, it's not the sound. It's just doesn't have the grit and the edge that I want from my Deep Purple. And let's face it, you can't expect it with voices. Gillan's voice isn't what it used to be. So, and it's not disrespecting. It's not my cup of tea. So, but Deep Purple will always be one of my favorite bands of all time. All right, two more, folks. Have to include Led Zeppelin, my second favorite band of all time, and an almost perfect discography, not a long discography. Well, considering how bands with egos and what have you, it is a pretty good long discography. You're lucky if you have 8 albums in your discography because of egos, as I said, and attrition and bad luck and not getting along and that kind of thing. But yeah, so the debut is very raw, like Metallica's, but in a different way because it's a different type of music, and it's just great blues rock at its best. Excuse me. Led Zeppelin 2, even better. Then you get into Led Zeppelin 3 with them showing, hey, we want to show you that we can do other things like folk rock, right? Songs that are on that third album showcase that talent, right? But you still have some heavy stuff like Immigrant Song, and then the heavy blues song, Since I've Been Loving You. One of my favorite songs of all time. It's just that powerful. Friends and Celebration Day are great. Out on the Tiles is heavy. Inspiring Zebra to do that live when I was a kid in grammar school, right? Yeah, Led Zeppelin 3. There was times when Led Zeppelin 3 is my favorite album. Led Zeppelin 4 or the Symbols album or the No Name album or just Led Zeppelin. By many argued their magnum opus. Stairway to Heaven, my favorite song. The greatest guitar solo perhaps of all time. For me, I think it is. If not, it's definitely my top 5 or top 3. Again, like Led Zeppelin 3, they're showing you, hey, let's do some different things, different textures, some different flavors, like Indian music. Four Sticks comes to mind. Them going down the Beatles rabbit hole, right? Trying to do more ethnic styling, so music, and it so works. You have the folkiness of Going to California and Misty Mountain Hop, right? Another Lord of the Rings type song. You have the folkiness with Sandy Denny on the Battle of Evermore, which is just amazing. And of course, you have the meat and potatoes rock and roll songs in Rock and Roll and Black Dog. So, then you get Houses of the Holy, some wonderful stuff there. Robert Plant has gone on record saying that he likes this album more than 4. I'm the other way around, but it is a good album, if not a great album, because it's a very good album because of songs like the Rain song, The Song Remains the Same, which is those are wonderful. Light and Shade, right? Shade and Light, excuse me. No Quarter, if I haven't mentioned, is just phenomenal. Very psychedelic and trippy and earthy and very moody. Take it all in. When the Levee Breaks was on the previous album, I failed to mention that's a great song, great drums. And Houses of the Holy. There's something about this album that has a mystique about it, or a mystery about it that I just can't describe or put my finger on it, but it is a very good album. Over the Hills and Far Away, The Crunch. Okay, Physical Graffiti, I've said a lot about this when I did the 50th anniversary episode regarding the 50th anniversary of that album, so I'll be brief here. The greatest double album of all time, whether on vinyl or CD, and it's just a treasure trove of light and shade, acoustic numbers, heavy songs, borderline proto-metal, if not proto-album, proto-metal songs like the Wanton Song and Trampled Underfoot, but then you get the enigmatic, exotic piece in Kashmir, right, that they want to do. Just an homage to Neil Young, and By the Seaside, you have the wonderful, slow, yet emotional 10 Years Gone, cover song of, anyway, I'm trying to, Richie Valens, the cover song that he did from him. So yeah, Led Zeppelin, then you get, of course, Presence and Into the Outdoor and Coda. And Presence, I think, is wildly underrated because of songs like Achilles' Last Stand. You have some great lyrics in that song and in that album. Nobody's Fault But Mine, right? Great album, I think. And then there are parts of Coda I just love, and parts of Into the Outdoor I love as well, like Carousel Umbra and In the Evening and Hot Dog, as funny as that is, and the last 2 songs of the album, the 2 slower songs, I'm Gonna Crawl, and then the song before that, All My Love, which is just wonderful. And then finally, so Led Zeppelin, and then finally my favorite band of all time, of course, it's going to be in this list, is Rush. So their best period, the debut through and including Grace Under Pressure, including the live material, All the World's a Stage, excuse me, and Live in YYZ, which comes out much later, but is essentially the same album as Exit Stage Left. My favorite prog band of all time, my favorite prog, well, how do I want to put this? There probably, how many bands are there that you can call progressive hard rock or hard rock prog? Rush is my favorite. They just have an amazing, perhaps even, yes, for me personally, more so than Genesis, the best epic songs of all time. And like 16 of them maybe there's a video in the future, maybe, Yeah, and they have Light and Shade. They have concept pieces like 2112 and Hemispheres, and then the full-blown concept piece with the last album, Clockwork Angels, which is not great, but it's very good. There's some wonderful stuff there. The comeback album with Vapor Trails. Fly By Night sounds like a pure classic rock album with one epic track and one progressive rock song in By Torn the Snow Dog. You have the full-blown progressive rock album, the third album with Caress of Steel because of the Necromancer, and the last track, all of side 2, right outside B, in The Fountain of Lemneth. I love this album. 2112, of course, is a masterpiece. Moving Pictures is a masterpiece. Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres are masterpieces. How many bands have that many masterpieces in their discography? Some, but not a whole lot. It's one of the things that makes Rush great. And let's see, what am I missing? Permanent Waves is a masterpiece, if you ask me. I love those two slow songs as well. And then if we talk about Signals and Race Under Pressure very briefly to close things out, I warmed up to these right after high school. I think they're solid albums. I would call them very good albums. So there you have it, folks. This is the final episode in my two-part series, the 50 bands and artists I listen to the most. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. I'll see you next time.